Well, to discuss the battle that lies ahead for independence or to save the Union and how Brexit plays into all of that, I'm joined now by Ian Blackford, who's an SNP MP, and he's also the party's social justice spokesman. Ian Murray is a Labour MP for Edinburgh South, the party's only Scottish MP, and he's also their Labour's Westminster spokesman. Owen Paterson is a Conservative MP, he was a Cabinet Minister and is a prominent Brexiteer. Good evening to all of you.
Good evening.
Owen Paterson, if I can first of all come to you with that report that is being cited by Reuters in the Times that actually Theresa May well be prepared to reject this offer. Can you tell us any more about that?
I know absolutely nothing about it, but she would be in tune with the very latest poll I've seen today, which is on Sky Data, showing that 65% of Scots do not want a second independence referendum. And I think it would be much, much better if the SNP concentrated on issues like schools, where sadly they had one of the best education systems in Europe, which has declined under their watch. Hospitals, they've had a massive police reform, which has not gone well, according to contacts I've got in Scotland. And I do think the one point that's coming out of your clips earlier, this absolute confidence the SNP have that they would somehow stay within the European Union. There is one huge obstacle to that, and that is Catalonia. I just don't see the Spanish accepting it.
Ian Blackford, why now? And what will you do if Theresa May says no?
Well, we published a document just before Christmas, Scotland's position in Europe, where we sought to achieve a compromise, a solution with the UK government, where we respected that the people of England wanted to leave the EU, but equally we've said that people in Scotland have voted to remain within the EU, 62%. It's about respecting that wish. And, you know, when I listen to a Conservative MP lecturing us about what we should be doing, there is a democratic majority in the Scottish Parliament in favour of independence. We're perfectly entitled, as we said in our manifesto, as circumstances change, to go back to the Scottish people and ask them to make that choice as to what do they want. Where should their future lie? This hard Tory Brexit, because let's not forget it's the Conservatives that have taken us to this position, and it's the intransigence of the Conservative government that's not prepared to negotiate with the Scottish government that has led to this.
But if the crucial fact is that Scotland wants to remain within the EU when the rest of the UK has voted to leave, if that's the crucial fact, and as Owen Paterson was pointing out, there's no guarantee that you can stay in the EU, even as an independent nation. Spain might well block that if that were to come to a vote within the EU. What's the point?
Well, there are 2 points I would make. One is that when we were asked in the referendum in 2014 as if we were staying in the UK, we were promised at that time that our position in Europe was safe. Now, we have had very, very strong messages of support from throughout the European Union over the course of the last few months, indeed encouraging noises from Spain that they wouldn't block Scotland's position. We recognise we've got a job to do to make sure we can maintain that, but there is very strong goodwill that we're receiving from member states of the European Union, recognising the unique position that we're in, that Scotland voted to remain within the European Union, and we want to work with the institutions of the EU on the back of a positive support for Scottish independence to make sure that we can put that into effect.
Ian Murray, given Labour's difficulties in Scotland, would you welcome the Prime Minister refusing a request for a second referendum?
Well, I think it's not really up to the Prime Minister, it's up to the people of Scotland. And as Owen Paterson has said quite clearly, the poll after poll after poll has shown that the people of Scotland don't want another independence referendum. And even if there was a second independence referendum, there's been very, very little change on how people would vote. In fact, I think one of the polls showed that there's been more people going from yes to no than there has been from no to yes.
But equally, the SNP can point to the fact that they do have a majority at Holyrood for a vote on independence.
Well, they do have a majority at Holyrood because they get the support of the Greens, who are giving them unconditional support for this, which is beyond my own comprehension of why they would do that. But one of the key points here that I think we are talking about in terms of access again to the EU, one of the things that Nicola Sturgeon said today, which is incredibly disingenuous, is that Westminster wants to take powers back off the Scottish Parliament. That is not true. But even if it was true, and it's not true, what Ian Blackford's proposition is that Scotland will become an independent country and then hand all those powers back to the European Union again. It's not only Catalonia that's a problem in terms of Scotland being back in the European Union, it's the deficit, which sits at 4 times what the EU would ask for in terms of convergence. They would have to take on at least the euro or be operating with the pound or some other currency sitting outside of the euro, which is almost impossible. And then you get back into all the arguments again of where we draw borders. It's quite clear that it's in Scotland's interest interest, both economically, socially and culturally, to stay part of the United Kingdom and to try and work for the softest of soft Brexits.
Ian Blackford, can Scotland afford independence? The price of oil has dropped dramatically since 2014.
Yes, of course we can, because what we want to do is to create Scotland as a destination in Europe. It's about aspiration. It's about making sure that we can deliver sustainable economic growth in Scotland. The deficit that we have today is a deficit that is created under the circumstances of the Union. It's about creating hope and prosperity for people. And the idea that we can be forced to join the euro is just sheer nonsense. The example of that is, of course, Sweden, which can't be forced to join the euro. It would be the same with us. As long as we do not sign up to the ERM2, then we could never be forced to join the euro. Our destiny would be in our own hands. If I could use the phrase that's often used by the Conservatives, it's about taking back control, but agreeing to share some of that sovereignty as appropriate with the institutions of the European Union. It's a progressive position.
But not sharing some of that sovereignty with the institutions of the United Kingdom, which is much more important.
We're happy to do that, though, Ian. The problem we have got is that we have presented a document, and we've had strong support, I have to say, throughout the Parliament, even from your own party, about representing Scotland's interests. It's the intransigence of the Conservative government that is refusing to compromise with the Scottish government and then de facto the Scottish people that's putting us in that position.
Owen Paterson, it's interesting to note that the pound actually went up after Nicola Sturgeon's speech this morning, which suggests that perhaps there are expectations that the government may move away from hard Brexit and try to move towards a sort of a more centrist area to accommodate Scottish views on the single market, on the European Union. Is that something that you think could be the case?
Well, there are many aspects of Brexit which will be tremendously favourable to Scotland. And when I was doing DEFRA, I spent a lot of time in Scotland talking to fishermen. If we take back control of our fisheries, that is an enormous boost to a very significant industry in Scotland. The whisky industry has phenomenal potential.
But could the negotiations
like
be
India.
affected by the idea of a second referendum on independence? Will that be taken into account by the negotiators, by Theresa May?
Sorry, no, the point I'm making is that I see Brexit as a wonderful opportunity for Scotland, which, don't forget, exports 4 times as much to the UK as it does to the EU. And beyond those shores, our policy, as espoused by the government, of really opening up to the world, gives tremendous opportunities to a whole range of products which are made, and specifically are Scottish. And surely far better... We've only just had a referendum in Scotland a couple of years ago with a very, very clear vote to stay within the UK. Surely far better is to see how Brexit pans out, and instead of all this doom-mongering, to see the tremendous opportunities that Brexit will bring to thousands of people across Scotland.
Ian Blackford, apart from the polling data, how much of a problem is it for you that many yes voters also backed Leave?
I think we actually have to explain to people what the risks are of a hard Brexit. I mean, no one talks about fishing and farming. I mean, we've got a very clear example that the European Union granted funds to the UK primarily to give to Scottish crofters because of the low level of support that we are given, and those funds weren't handed over. We get a better deal from the EU than we do from London, and that's a message that we've got to get across to people. I don't want to see a situation that we're facing tariff barriers for our farmers and our fishermen, as exactly what would happen with a hard Brexit. We cannot allow that to happen. So yes, we have got to make sure that we get our message across to all the people in Scotland about what that difference is, the opportunity of creating Scotland as a destination. We're already losing people from our universities, highly mobile people that are leaving because of the threat of Brexit, the threat that there are to the 173,000 European nationals.
But young Scots move away as well. That's a big key. The big key demographic change in Scotland is young Indigenous Scots moving south. That is not a problem with immigration.
Yes, but we have to create additional economic growth in Scotland when we need the powers to do that. If we look over the last 100 years, Scotland has not grown its population. We need to change the record. It's only if we're able to enhance Scotland's
economic growth.
Well,
I wish you would change the record, because I asked Deirdre Brock, one of your colleagues, what the currency would be in an independent Scotland. She said I was to stop scaremongering and playing the records of the past.
I mean,
Ian Blackford has essentially just said, if I paraphrase him, that the UK is a drain on Scotland's resources. Scotland has a £15 billion deficit. It's paid for by the pooling and sharing of resources across the UK. They will never be able to find a way around that. And saying we need a few more levers and have a few more people migrating into Scotland is not going to change that simple fact to turn towards the EU away from the United Kingdom. I suspect this debate
will continue for the weeks and months to come. Ian Murray, Ian Blackford, Owen Paterson, thank you all very much.